science fiction. Okay, if you remember in my review for The Crystal Bridge by Charlie Pulsifer, I talked about how I'm not really a big reader of science fiction. I have a hard time finding sci-fi that I can actually enjoy because I have a hard time understanding it. I have a hard time picturing it in my head, so I have a hard time enjoying it. I watch a lot of sci-fi and enjoy it because I can comprehend it better. Even with the more complicated sci-fi concepts, I don't have trouble understanding them in a show because it's always visually demonstrated. It just clicks. Now I present Minority Report and Other Stories by Philip K. Dick. Okay, not a big reader of sci-fi, but The Crystal Bridge gave me hope that I could still find some sci-fi that I could really enjoy and get into, and so I decided to give another one a try, and the reason that I picked up this audiobook is actually because I have had my eye on the movie Minority Report. I work in a library, so, whenever I'm working or looking around the shelves, I always check out, I'm always watching for good-looking titles, and I noticed this movie one day when I was shelving, and I read the description, and I'm like, okay, that sounds awesome. So I've been sort of just keeping an eye on it, waiting for a chance that I actually have time to watch a movie in order to grab it, yada yada yada. So one day I also noticed this on the shelf, and this is the audiobook because I had no idea that Minority Report was originally a short story that was made into a movie, and you guys know me, I love book-to-movie comparisons, okay? So, I grabbed it. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. To be honest, I actually anticipated that I would have a really hard time with this story, especially in audiobook form. I was so wrong. I loved this book. The author is brilliant. His stories completely blew my mind. I, as the picky sci-fi reader, would read his sci-fi. In fact, I will read his sci-fi. That's going on the reading list for 2015. Read more sci-fi. As I was listening to this, the more stories I listened to, the more dismayed I became, because I had never heard of Philip K. Dick before. A writer of sci-fi not being known to a reader of sci-fi, that's really not that surprising. What surprised me is the fact that there are 5 stories in this anthology, and 3 of them have been made into major motion pictures. First of all, we have Minority Report, the reason that I picked up the audiobook in the first place. Second, we have We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which was the basis for the movie Total Recall, which originally was a Schwarzenegger film, and then they remade with Colin Farrell a couple of years ago. So, this is a huge deal. Everybody knows about the movie Total Recall. Everybody's heard of that. And third, the story Paycheck, which was also made into a movie several years ago with Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman and Aaron Eckhart. And that wasn't a huge deal. It was not a blockbuster hit. But I really enjoyed that movie, and I own it, and so I am very familiar with it. Aside from these stories, Philip K. Dick also wrote a novel called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and that was turned into the movie Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, which I haven't seen, but it's a total cult classic, and I know about it, and I know of it. And he wrote the novel that it was based on. So my question is this: how have I never heard of Philip K. Dick before? How? Tons of his stuff has been made into movies, and not just little indie films either, huge blockbuster Hollywood movies with big name actors and everything that have actually become quite famous in their own right. How have I never known that they were based off of his work and that he's the author responsible? How? Something has been lost in transition there. I should know about authors that are famous for books they've written that have been made into huge blockbuster movies. And I've actually been trying to work this out in my head. Is it just a matter of timing? Dick died in the early 80s, and so, he wouldn't have been around for some of these films that have been made into movies, and I guess at the time it wasn't a very popular thing to do, to tell people that this movie was based off of this book. Nowadays in trailers, you're seeing it in big letters, the #1 bestseller on the New York Times list, and who the authors are. I mean, you know Divergent was written by Veronica Roth. You know The Hunger Games were written by Suzanne Collins. You know these things. And I don't know, it just makes me sad that with Paycheck and Total Recall and Blade Runner, you don't know that they're written by Philip K. Dick. Maybe it's just a change of the times, but regardless of the reasons, I think it's sad. Because the man is a brilliant sci-fi writer. His concepts are in-depth and interesting. Most importantly, they're diverse. The stories don't bleed into each other or share many commonalities or character traits, so they're completely unique. Each had me guessing and each still managed to surprise me. My two favorite stories had to be Minority Report, which was, the concept was just so interesting and totally out there and out of my comfort zone that it just, yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. And my second favorite was The Eyes Have It. This was a really short story. It was only about 7 minutes long on the audio, where most of these are like half an hour or an hour, but The Eyes Have It was really short. It was absolutely hilarious. I mean, I was reading that and I'm like, that is something that I would have written. That is the way that my brain works. I definitely appreciated that one. So The Eyes Have It and Minority Report were my two favorites, but there were 5 stories on here, and they're all really, really good. I'll just go ahead and list them off really quick. There was The Minority Report, there was We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which is the basis for Total Recall, there was Second Variety, Paycheck, and The Eyes Have It, which I'm just gonna laugh about that every time somebody mentions that title, because it's funny. Minority Report and Other Stories by Philip K. Dick gets 5 stars, which probably doesn't surprise you, and it gives me even more hope that I am actually a sci-fi reader deep down in my reader's soul, and I'm really excited about it. I am going to read more of his work because he is just a good writer. So yeah, I'm looking forward to much more of his work in both book and film, and I will see you guys later.